A man abandons his dog and her puppies in a forest. Tied to a tree, the animals are unable to do anything. Suddenly, a pack of wolves appears. Instead of attacking them, the animals did something to move anyone. Before hearing this surprising story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, when Jack parked his pickup truck on the edge of a dirt road leading to a dense forest. He looked at the passenger seat, where Luna, a golden-furred Labrador mix, was panting anxiously. Her brown eyes shone with confidence, completely unaware of what was about to happen. In the back seat, 3 puppies were squirming, barking and whimpering, eager for the adventure they imagined was coming. Jack took a deep breath, trying to ignore the lump in his throat. "It's the best thing to do," he muttered to himself, as if trying to convince himself. With mechanical movements, he got out of the car and opened the back door. Luna jumped out excitedly, wagging her tail, followed by her puppies, who were stumbling with their not yet fully coordinated little paws. Jack took an old rope from the trunk and loosely tied it around Luna's neck. "Let's go for a walk, girl," he said, his voice betraying an almost imperceptible tremor. Luna followed him cheerfully, the puppies bouncing around her as they entered the forest. The smell of pine trees and damp earth filled the air, and the sound of birds began to diminish with the approach of twilight. After walking for a few minutes, Jack stopped near a large tree. His heart was racing, and his hands were shaking slightly as he tied the rope to the trunk. Luna looked at him curiously, not understanding why they were stopping there. "Stay here, Luna," Jack ordered, his voice faltering. He knelt down, stroking the dog's head one last time. The puppies, oblivious to the tension of the moment, played around, chasing fallen leaves and nibbling on twigs. Jack got up abruptly and began to walk away. Luna barked, confused, pulling on the rope that tied her to the tree. The puppies, realizing something was wrong, began to whimper. "Stay!" Jack shouted, more to himself than to Luna. He turned and started running back to the car, Luna's desperate barks echoing behind him. Tears began to stream down his face as he forced himself not to look back. Reaching the pickup truck, Jack quickly got in and started the engine. Luna's barks could still be heard in the distance, mixed with the sad howls of the puppies. He stepped on the accelerator, leaving a cloud of dust behind along with the canine family he had just abandoned. As he drove back to the city, Jack tried to justify his actions to himself. His new girlfriend was allergic to dogs, and he couldn't afford to lose this relationship. Besides, with his new job requiring long hours of work, he no longer had time to properly care for Luna and her puppies. "They'll be fine," he muttered to himself, the words sounding hollow in his own ears. "Someone will find them. Maybe a family that can take better care of them." But as the distance between him and the forest increased, the reality of what he had done began to weigh on his conscience. Memories of happy years with Luna, playing in the park, walks on the beach, cozy nights on the couch, flooded his mind. He remembered the day he found her, an abandoned puppy in a cardboard box on the street, and how she looked at him with those eyes full of hope. Jack gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He turned on the radio, turning up the volume to try to drown out the thoughts that tormented him. But not even the loud music could silence the voice in his head that screamed that he had betrayed the purest trust he had ever known. Meanwhile, in the forest, Luna remained tied to the tree, barking incessantly in the direction Jack had disappeared. Her puppies, frightened and confused, huddled around her, seeking comfort and protection. As night fell, the sounds of the forest changed. The song of diurnal birds gave way to the calls of owls and the buzz of nocturnal insects. Luna, exhausted from barking, finally lay down, wrapping her puppies with her body to keep them warm. Her eyes remained fixed in the direction of the road, expecting at any moment that the headlights of Jack's pickup truck would appear between the trees. But as the hours passed, this hope began to diminish. The cold night wind rustled the leaves of the trees, bringing with it the smell of distant rain. Luna shivered, pulling her puppies closer. She didn't understand why Jack had left them there, but her maternal instinct compelled her to protect her offspring at all costs. One of the puppies, the smallest of the litter, began to whimper with hunger. Luna gently licked it, trying to calm it down. She herself felt her stomach growling, but there was nothing she could do, tied as she was to the tree. Suddenly, a branch cracked in the darkness, making Luna raise her head in alert. Her eyes scanned the gloom, trying to identify the source of the sound. For a moment, She thought she saw a pair of bright eyes watching her from afar, but they disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. Luna let out a low growl, warning any potential threat to keep its distance. Her puppies stirred, sensing their mother's tension. She calmed them with soft licks but remained vigilant. As the night progressed, the sounds of the forest seemed to intensify. The distant howl of a wolf echoed through the woods, making Luna shudder. She knew she wasn't in her usual territory, and that unknown dangers could be lurking in the shadows. Exhausted but determined to protect her puppies, Luna remained awake, her senses on high alert. Every sound, every movement in the shadows made her fear for what might happen. But above all, one question echoed in her canine mind. Why had Jack abandoned them? Dawn came slowly to the forest, bringing with it a thin mist that crept between the trees. Luna, exhausted after a night of vigilance, raised her head as she felt the first rays of sun touch her fur. Her puppies, huddled close to her, began to stir, waking up hungry and thirsty. The dog tried to stand up, but the rope that tied her to the tree limited her movements. She looked around, hopeful that Jack had returned during the night, but the forest remained silent except for the usual sounds of nature awakening. One of the puppies, the bravest, began to explore the surroundings, curiously sniffing the roots of the tree. Luna watched it carefully, barking softly to call it back when it strayed too far. The other two puppies, still shy, remained close to her, whimpering with hunger. The hours dragged on, and Luna felt thirst tightening. She could hear the distant sound of a stream, but was unable to reach it. Her maternal instincts urged her to find food for her puppies, but the rope cruelly kept her tied. By noon, the heat began to rise, making Luna pant. She lay down in the shade of the tree, allowing her puppies to nurse, although she knew her milk was diminishing due to lack of food and water. It was then that a movement in the vegetation caught her attention. Luna raised her ears, alert. Through the foliage emerged a young deer, cautious and elegant. The animal stopped a few meters away, observing Luna and her puppies with curiosity. Luna, normally inclined to chase, remained still, aware of her inability to move freely. The deer, realizing there was no immediate danger, slowly approached. It stopped a few steps from Luna, its large brown eyes fixed on hers. For a moment, there was a silent connection between the two animals. Luna felt a strange sense of understanding, as if the deer understood her situation. The animal lowered its head, calmly grazing near the tree where Luna was tied. The puppies, intrigued by the new visitor, tried to approach, but Luna held them back with a soft growl. The deer, however, showed no fear. It continued grazing peacefully, as if wanting to convey a message of peace. As the afternoon progressed, other forest animals began to appear. A squirrel came down from a nearby tree, observing the scene with curiosity. Birds perched on the branches above, their songs echoing through the woods. Luna watched everything with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. Part of her still expected to see Jack's pickup truck emerge between the trees, but another part was beginning to accept the reality of her new situation. As the sun began to set, the deer finally moved away, silently disappearing into the vegetation. Luna watched it leave with a sense of loss, as if she had lost a silent friend. Night brought new challenges. The air cooled quickly, and Luna pulled her puppies close, trying to keep them warm. The nocturnal sounds of the forest seemed more threatening now, and she remained alert, her eyes constantly scanning the darkness. It was then that she heard it. A distant howl, different from anything she had heard before. It wasn't the familiar bark of a dog, nor the lonely howl of a coyote. It was something deeper, more primitive. Luna felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Another howl answered the first, closer this time. Luna stood up, positioning herself protectively over her puppies. She could smell them now. Wolves. Her instinct told her they were dangerous, predators who wouldn't hesitate to attack her and her defenseless puppies. The minutes dragged on, tense and silent. Luna could hear movements in the vegetation, branches breaking under cautious paws. Her puppies, sensing the danger, remained quiet, trembling against their mother's body. Suddenly, a pair of yellow eyes shone in the darkness. Luna let out a warning growl, baring her teeth. More eyes appeared, surrounding the tree where she was tied. The wolf pack had arrived. The largest of them, probably the leader, stepped forward. He was a magnificent animal, with silver-grey fur and a presence that exuded power and intelligence. He stopped a few meters from Luna, his eyes fixed on hers. Luna stood firm, although her heart was racing. She knew she had no chance against an entire pack, but she was determined to protect her puppies to the end. To her surprise, the wolf didn't attack. Instead, he tilted his head, as if assessing the situation. His eyes moved from the rope that tied Luna to the tree to the puppies trembling beneath her. Slowly, the wolf approached closer. Luna tensed her muscles, preparing for what she thought was an inevitable attack. But what happened next caught her completely by surprise. The wolf lowered his head and carefully began to bite the rope that tied Luna. His sharp teeth worked with precision, fraying the fibers of the rope. Luna remained motionless, divided between fear and disbelief. After a few minutes of persistent work, the rope finally gave way. Luna felt the pressure around her neck ease, and for the first time in 2 days, she was free. The wolf backed up a few steps, still keeping his gaze fixed on Luna. She hesitated, unsure of what to do. Her instincts screamed for her to flee, but something in the wolf's posture made her pause. It was then that the wolf did something even more surprising. He turned and began to walk slowly away, stopping after a few steps to look back, as if inviting Luna to follow him. Luna looked at her puppies, then at the wolf and back at the dark forest around her. She knew she couldn't stay there, exposed and vulnerable. With a decision that would change the course of her life and that of her puppies, Luna began to follow him, carrying one puppy by the scruff while the other 2 stumbled behind her. As they delved deeper into the forest, Luna didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since Jack had abandoned her, she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had found a new home, a new family, in the most unlikely of places. The first rays of sun penetrated the dense foliage of the forest as Luna, exhausted and cautious, followed the alpha wolf through the vegetation. Her puppies, still too young to understand the gravity of the situation, stumbled behind her, occasionally stopping to sniff a leaf or bite a fallen twig. The grey wolf led the way with sure steps, occasionally looking back to make sure Luna and her offspring were following. The dog in turn remained alert, her sharpened senses catching every sound and movement around her. Although the wolf had shown unexpected kindness in freeing her, Luna couldn't ignore years of instinct telling her to be wary of predators. After what seemed like an eternity of walking, the group reached a small clearing. Luna immediately realized they had arrived at the pack's territory. The smell of wolves was everywhere, impregnated in the trees and soil. In the center of the clearing, a large rock protruded from the ground, forming a kind of natural shelter. Around it, Luna could see other members of the pack emerging from the shadows, their curious eyes fixed on the newcomers. The alpha wolf let out a low howl, apparently signaling to the others that Luna and her puppies were not a threat. Slowly, the other wolves approached, sniffing the air with interest. Luna instinctively pulled her puppies close, a low growl escaping her throat. To her surprise, a reddish-brown wolf approached, her eyes conveying a calmness Luna didn't expect. The she-wolf tilted her head, as if inviting Luna to relax. Then, to Luna's astonishment, the she-wolf lay down, exposing her belly in a clear sign of submission and trust. It was as if she was saying, "You're safe here." Slowly, the other wolves followed suit, lying down or sitting, creating a circle around Luna and her puppies. The alpha wolf remained standing, his posture vigilant as if standing guard. Luna, still hesitant, allowed her puppies to explore a bit. The little ones, curious and oblivious to potential danger, began to sniff the nearest wolves. To Luna's relief, the wolves responded with gentleness, some even affectionately licking the puppies. Hours passed, and Luna gradually began to relax. The pack seemed to accept her, and more importantly, accepted her puppies. When the sun reached its highest point in the sky, the reddish-brown she-wolf got up and disappeared into the forest, returning shortly after, with a rabbit in her mouth. To Luna's astonishment, the she-wolf deposited the prey at her feet, respectfully backing away. It was a clear gesture, an offer of food, of sustenance. Luna hesitated for a moment, then, driven by hunger, began to eat. Her puppies, still too young for solid meat, nursed with renewed vigor, benefiting from their mother's meal. Meanwhile, far away in the city, Jack was trying to go on with his life. Sitting in his new office, he looked out the window, his mind wandering to Luna and the puppies. Guilt gnawed at him, but he tried to stifle it, telling himself he had done what was necessary. His girlfriend Emily entered the room, smiling. "Ready for lunch, honey?" she asked, approaching for a kiss. Jack forced a smile, nodding. As they left the office, they passed by a pet shop. In the window, Labrador puppies played cheerfully. Jack felt his heart tighten, vividly remembering Luna. "Something wrong?" Emily asked, noticing his distant expression. "Nothing," Jack lied, forcing another smile. "Just thinking about work." Back in the forest, days turned into weeks. Luna and her puppies were gradually integrated into the pack's routine. The wolves accepted them as part of the group, sharing food and protection. Luna watched, fascinated, as the wolves hunted as a team, communicated through howls and body language, and cared for each other. Her puppies, growing rapidly, began to play with the wolf pups, learning the ways of the forest and the skills necessary to survive. The reddish-brown she-wolf, whom Luna came to call Ruby in her mind, became a kind of mentor. She taught Luna the best places to hunt, how to avoid the dangers of the forest, and most importantly, how to communicate with the pack. One night, as the full moon bathed the clearing in its silver light, the alpha wolf climbed onto the large rock and let out a long, deep howl. To Luna's surprise, the other wolves joined in, creating a wild symphony that echoed through the forest. Ruby, sitting next to Luna, encouraged her with a look. Luna hesitated for a moment, then, driven by a feeling she couldn't explain, raised her head and joined the chorus. Her bark mixed with the howls of the wolves, creating a unique and powerful harmony. In that moment, Luna felt she truly belonged there. The pain of Jack's abandonment was still present, but it was beginning to heal. She had found a new family, one that accepted her completely, along with her puppies. Months passed, and the forest changed with the seasons. Luna and her puppies grew strong and healthy, learning the ways of the pack. The puppies, now almost adults, ran and hunted with the young wolves, their mixed heritage creating a unique combination of skills. Luna, in turn, became an integral part of the pack. Her canine intelligence, combined with the strength and endurance she acquired in the wild, made her a skilled hunter. She learned to communicate through howls and body language, although sometimes she still barked out of habit, to the apparent amusement of her wolf companions. One afternoon, as the pack rested after a successful hunt, Luna heard a distant sound that made her heart leap, the noise of an engine. Memories of Jack and her previous life flooded her mind. For a brief moment, she felt the urge to run toward the sound, to look for the man who was once her owner. But then, she looked around. She saw her puppies, now strong and confident, playing with the young wolves. She saw Ruby, her friend and mentor, watching her with understanding eyes. She saw the alpha wolf, strong and protective, guarding the pack. And she realized she no longer needed to look for a home. She was already home. Luna got up, stretched, and walked to where her puppies were playing. She watched them with pride, seeing how they had grown and adapted. They were a perfect blend of two worlds, the loyalty and affection of a dog, combined with the strength and cunning of a wolf. As the sound of the engine disappeared in the distance, Luna felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. Jack's abandonment, which once seemed like a death sentence, had turned into a new beginning. She had found strength she didn't know she possessed, and a family that loved her unconditionally. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Luna raised her head and let out a long, melodious howl. One by one, the pack members joined her, their voices rising in a wild and beautiful song that echoed through the forest. And so, under the twilight sky, Luna celebrated her new life, her new family, and the incredible journey that had brought her here. The future was uncertain, but she would face it with courage, surrounded by those who had welcomed her when she needed it most. Years passed like the seasons in the forest, each bringing new challenges and joys for Luna and her adoptive family. Her puppies, now adults, had become respected members of the pack, each finding their own role in the group's hierarchy. The oldest, whom Luna affectionately called Thunder due to his powerful voice, had become an exceptional hunter. His unique blend of canine and lupine instincts made him unpredictable to prey, allowing him to surprise them with tactics that neither dog nor wolf would use alone. The middle daughter, Breeze, had inherited Luna's gentleness. She had become a kind of caretaker for the pack, always attentive to the pups and older members. Her calm presence soothed even the most agitated wolves during stormy nights. The youngest, Shadow, was the most curious and adventurous. He often ventured beyond the usual boundaries of the pack's territory, always returning with valuable information about changes in the forest or potential threats. Luna watched her children with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. Although happy with the life they had built, she sometimes found herself thinking of Jack and the life she had left behind. These memories, however, were increasingly distant, like a half-forgotten dream upon waking. One afternoon, as the pack rested after a successful hunt, Luna noticed an unusual agitation among the younger wolves. Curious, she approached a group gathering at the edge of the clearing. "What's happening?" she asked Ruby, who was watching the scene with a worried look. "The young ones are restless," Ruby replied. "They've heard rumors of humans approaching the forest. Some want to investigate." Luna felt a shiver run down her spine. Humans. The word evoked a confusing mixture of emotions: longing, fear, curiosity. She knew that humans could be both a threat and a source of fascination for the younger wolves. "This could be dangerous," Luna said, her voice laden with concern. Ruby nodded. "The alpha is worried too. He fears the young one's curiosity might lead to a confrontation." At that moment, Luna had an idea. She knew both worlds, that of humans and that of the forest. Perhaps she could use this knowledge to help protect the pack. "What if I went to investigate?" Luna suggested. "I can approach humans without raising suspicion. I can find out what they're doing here." Ruby looked at her with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Are you sure, Luna? This could be risky for you too." Luna hesitated for a moment, remembering her previous life. Then, with renewed determination, she answered, "I am. This is my family now, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it." With the alpha's reluctant approval, Luna prepared for her mission. Her children, worried, insisted on accompanying her to the edge of the pack's territory. "Be careful, Mom," said Thunder, his normally strong voice now soft with concern. "Come back to us," added Breeze, touching her nose to Luna's in a gesture of affection. Shadow, always the most adventurous, seemed torn between concern and envy. "Bring back interesting stories," he said, trying to hide his anxiety with bravado. Luna affectionately licked each of her children, promising to return safely. With one last look at the pack that had become her family, she set off toward the world of humans. As she moved away from familiar territory, Luna felt her canine instincts resurface. Long-forgotten smells flooded her senses: the acrid odor of asphalt, the tempting aroma of cooked food, the metallic smell of vehicles. It was a world she had left behind, but one that was still a part of her. After several hours of cautious walking, Luna reached the edge of a small town. Hidden in the vegetation, she observed the movement on the streets. Cars passed by, people walked hurriedly, children played in a nearby park. It was a scene both familiar and strange. It was then that she saw him, a man walking on the sidewalk, holding a dog's leash. Luna's heart raced. For a moment, she thought it was Jack. But no, this man was older, his hair graying at the temples. Luna observed the interaction between the man and the dog. There was affection there, a connection she remembered sharing with Jack. Part of her longed for that kind of relationship again, for the simplicity of being a loved pet. But then she remembered her children, Ruby, the alpha wolf, the entire pack that depended on her. She had a mission to fulfill, a family to protect. Focusing again on her task, Luna began to explore the edges of the town, keeping herself hidden. She soon discovered the reason for the humans' approach to the forest. A new road was being built, cutting through part of the pack's territory. Luna knew this could be disastrous for the wolves. More humans meant more danger, less territory to hunt, more risk of confrontations. She needed to go back and alert the pack. As she prepared to return to the forest, Luna heard a sound that made her freeze. A familiar voice, one she hadn't heard in years, but that still resonated in her memory. "Luna, is that you, girl?" She turned slowly, her heart beating so hard it felt like it would leap out of her chest. There, a few meters away, was Jack. He looked older, with wrinkles around his eyes and grey strands at his temples. His eyes, however, were the same that Luna remembered, now wide with shock and disbelief. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Luna felt a whirlwind of emotions: Joy, hurt, confusion, longing. Part of her wanted to run to Jack, to feel his touch again, to hear his voice saying everything would be all right. But another part, the part that had grown and changed in the years in the forest, reminded her of who she was now. No longer a helpless pet, but a protector, a mother, a vital member of a community. Jack took a hesitant step toward her, extending his hand. "Luna, I can't believe you're alive." Luna instinctively backed away, her eyes fixed on Jack's. She saw the pain and regret in his gaze, and for a moment almost gave in to the impulse to go to him. But then, the distant sound of a howl reached her ears, the call of her family, her true family. Luna looked at Jack one last time, etching his image in her memory. Then, without looking back, she turned and ran back to the forest, leaving Jack calling her name in vain. As she ran, Luna felt a weight being lifted from her heart. The past was finally in the past. Her future, her life, her family, everything was ahead of her, in the forest she now called home. Luna ran through the forest, her heart racing not just from physical exertion, but also from the emotional turbulence of the encounter with Jack. The trees passed in green and brown blurs as she hurried back to the pack's territory, carrying with her not only vital information about the new road, but also the weight of her newly confronted past. Upon reaching the familiar clearing, Luna was immediately surrounded by her children and other pack members. Their anxious eyes and curious noses sniffed the air around her, detecting the strange smells of the town she brought with her. "Mom, are you okay?" Thunder was the first to speak, his deep voice laden with concern. Luna nodded, trying to catch her breath. "I'm fine, but we have bigger problems to worry about." The alpha wolf approached, his imposing presence silencing the murmur that had formed. With a nod, he indicated that Luna should share her findings. "The humans are building a new road," Luna began, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "It will cut through part of our territory. We need to prepare for changes and possible dangers." A murmur of concern ran through the pack. The alpha remained silent for a moment, processing the information. "This is serious," he finally spoke. "We'll need to adapt our hunting routes and maybe even consider moving our main camp." As the pack discussed the implications of the news, Ruby approached Luna, her perceptive eyes noticing the agitation in her friend. "There's something else, isn't there?" Ruby asked softly. "Something happened out there." Luna hesitated, but knew she couldn't hide the truth from her closest friend. "I saw him, Ruby. Jack, the man who abandoned me." Ruby's eyes widened in surprise. "And how do you feel?" Luna sighed deeply. Confused. For a moment, all those old emotions came back, the joy of seeing him, the pain of abandonment. "But then you remembered who you are now," Ruby softly completed. Luna nodded. "Exactly. I realized that as much as that life was part of me, it's no longer who I am. My place is here, with you." Ruby touched her nose to Luna's in a gesture of comfort. "You made the right choice, my friend. Your loyalty and courage are admirable." In the days that followed, the pack mobilized to face the new reality. Patrols were sent to map the extent of the road construction and identify new safe areas for hunting and shelter. Luna, with her unique knowledge of the human world, became a valuable advisor. She helped interpret human behavior patterns, predicting when it would be safe to approach the road under construction and when it would be better to stay away. Her children, inspired by their mother's courage, took on leadership roles in these missions. Thunder led the night patrols, his powerful voice serving as an effective warning. Breeze used her gentle nature to calm the more anxious pack members, especially the frightened pups with the new sounds and smells. Shadow, with his insatiable curiosity, became a skilled explorer, often bringing crucial information about the progress of the construction. Meanwhile, in town, Jack couldn't get the encounter with Luna out of his mind. The sight of his former companion, now wild and independent, haunted him. He began visiting the edge of the forest frequently, hoping to glimpse her again. One day, while walking near the new road construction, Jack overheard a conversation between two workers that alarmed him. "I heard there's a wolf pack in this forest," one of them said. "The boss is talking about calling in hunters to take care of them before the road is finished." Jack's heart froze. Wolves? Could Luna be living with them? He couldn't allow them to be hunted. Determined to do something, Jack began researching wildlife conservation and environmental protection laws. Back in the forest, the pack faced daily challenges. The noise from the machines scared away the game, making feeding more difficult. Air and water pollution began to affect the delicate balance of the ecosystem. One night during a hunt, Luna and her children ventured closer to the construction area than usual, forced by the scarcity of prey in their usual territory. Suddenly, the sound of a roaring engine caught them by surprise. Bright lights cut through the darkness, momentarily blinding them. "Run!" Luna shouted, pushing her children towards the safety of the trees. But Shadow, always the most curious, hesitated for a second too long. The vehicle was approaching rapidly, its headlights fixed on the paralyzed wolf dog. In an instant, Luna made a decision. Launching herself forward, she pushed Shadow out of the way, but couldn't dodge in time. The vehicle hit her, throwing her several meters to the side of the road under construction. "Mom!" The anguished cry of her children echoed through the night. Luna lay motionless on the churned earth, her breathing shallow and irregular. Thunder and breeze ran to her side, while Shadow, horrified by the consequences of his hesitation, howled for help. The driver of the vehicle, startled by the accident, stopped and got out to check what he had hit. To everyone's shock, it was Jack. "Oh my God," he muttered, recognizing Luna. "What have I done?" At that critical moment, two worlds collided. Jack, the man who had once abandoned Luna, now found himself before her again, this time as her involuntary aggressor. Luna's children, creatures born between two worlds, faced the man with a mixture of fear and fury. And Luna, injured and vulnerable, lay between them, a living symbol of the connection and conflict between the human world and the wild world. The sound of sirens in the distance announced the approach of help, but also the imminent danger for the pack. Crucial decisions would need to be made in the next moments, decisions that would shape not only the fate of Luna and her family, but potentially the future of the entire forest and its inhabitants. Time seemed to have frozen on the edge of the road under construction. Luna lay motionless, her breathing weak and irregular. Jack, paralyzed by shock and guilt, remained beside his vehicle, unable to fully process the situation. Luna's children, torn between the instinct to protect their mother and the fear of the human, growled softly, their hair bristling. It was Breeze who first broke the impasse. With a courage born of desperation, she approached Luna, ignoring Jack's threatening presence. Gently, she began to lick her mother's face, trying to revive her. This gesture of unconditional love seemed to awaken something in Jack. He took a hesitant step towards Luna, his hands trembling. "I can help," he muttered, more to himself than to the animals. "I need to help." Thunder, still distrustful, placed himself between Jack and Luna, a warning growl escaping his throat. But Shadow, consumed by guilt and desperate to save his mother, looked at Jack with pleading eyes, as if understanding that this human might be Luna's only chance. The sound of sirens was rapidly approaching. Jack knew he had little time to act before the authorities arrived, potentially putting the entire pack in danger. "Okay, let's do this," Jack spoke, trying to keep his voice calm. Slowly, he approached Luna, his hands extended in a gesture of peace. "I won't hurt her, I promise." With infinite care, Jack examined Luna. His years of experience as a volunteer at an animal shelter came to the fore. He could feel broken ribs and suspected internal injuries. Luna needed immediate medical help, but taking her to a local vet would mean exposing the pack's existence. At that moment, an idea arose in his mind. He remembered Mike, an old veterinarian friend who worked with wild animals. Mike had a discreet clinic on the outskirts of town, away from prying eyes. "I know someone who can help," Jack said, looking at Luna's children. "But you'll have to trust me." As if understanding the gravity of the situation, the three wolf dogs exchanged glances. After a moment of silent communication, Thunder stepped aside, allowing Jack to approach Luna. With utmost care, Jack lifted Luna into his arms. She moaned softly, her eyes opening for a brief moment. In that instant, their gazes met, and Jack felt a wave of emotions, remorse, guilt, but also a fierce determination to make things right this time. "It's going to be okay, girl," he whispered. "I promise." Quickly, Jack placed Luna in the back seat of his car. To his surprise, Thunder, Breeze, and Shadow jumped into the vehicle too, refusing to leave their mother. The sirens were dangerously close now. With no time to hesitate, Jack got into the car and accelerated, leaving the scene of the accident behind. The journey to Mike's clinic was tense. Jack drove as fast as he dared, casting worried glances at Luna in the back seat through the rearview mirror. Her children huddled around her, gently licking her and emitting small whimpers of concern. When they finally arrived at the clinic, Jack was relieved to see the light still on. He honked frantically until Mike appeared at the door, his face a mask of confusion that quickly turned to shock at the unusual scene in Jack's car. "My God, Jack! What happened?" Mike exclaimed, running to help. "It's a long story," Jack replied, opening the back door, "but she needs help now." Together they carried Luna into the clinic, followed closely by her anxious children. Mike, quickly overcoming his initial surprise, went into professional mode, examining Luna and preparing for treatment. The hours that followed were a blur of frantic activity. Mike worked tirelessly, treating Luna's injuries, while Jack did his best to keep her children calm. It was a surreal scene. A man, 3 wolf dogs, and a veterinarian fighting together to save the life of an animal that represented the bridge between 2 worlds. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Mike emerged from the surgery room, exhausted but with a small smile on his face. "She's going to survive," he announced. "She'll need a lot of rest and care, but she's a fighter." The relief that flooded the room was palpable. Thunder, breeze, and shadow let out low howls of joy, while Jack felt tears of gratitude streaming down his face. "Now," Mike said, looking seriously at Jack, "I think you owe me some explanations." In the days that followed, as Luna slowly recovered, Jack shared the whole story with Mike: the abandonment, the reunion, and the threat that the new road posed to the pack. Mike, moved by the extraordinary situation, agreed to keep the secret and help in any way he could. Together, they began to formulate a plan not just to protect Luna and her family, but all the wildlife threatened by urban expansion. Meanwhile, in the forest, Luna and her children's absence did not go unnoticed. Ruby and the alpha wolf led frantic searches, fearing the worst. The pack was in turmoil, divided between the need to find their lost members and the growing threat of human presence. As Luna gained strength, Jack spent more and more time at the clinic, slowly rebuilding the bond he had broken years ago. He watched in wonder at the interaction between Luna and her children, seeing in them a unique blend of domesticity and wildness. One night, as everyone was resting in the clinic, Jack was awakened by a familiar sound: the distant howl of wolves. He saw thunder, breeze, and Shadow's ears perk up, alert. Luna, still weak but conscious, looked at the window with a longing expression. At that moment, Jack understood that, as much as he wished to keep Luna safe and close, she belonged in the forest, with her pack. The true act of love would be to help her return home and protect the world to which she now belonged. With this realization, a new determination was born in Jack. He would not only help Luna recover, but would use all the resources at his disposal to protect the forest and its inhabitants. It was time to correct the mistakes of the past and fight for a future where humans and animals could coexist in harmony. As the howl of the wolves echoed in the night, Jack made a silent promise to Luna and her family. This time he would not abandon them. This time he would stay and fight alongside them, no matter how difficult the road ahead. The weeks passed, and Luna's recovery progressed steadily. Mike's clinic had become an unlikely refuge, a place where 2 worlds met and learned to coexist. Jack spent every free moment there, torn between caring for Luna and planning how to protect the forest and its inhabitants. One afternoon, while Luna was resting with her pups around her, Jack and Mike were hunched over maps and documents spread across the clinic table. "The situation is more complicated than we thought," Mike said, running his hand through his graying hair. "The construction company has all the necessary licenses for the road. Legally, they're covered." Jack sighed heavily. "There must be something we can do. We can't just allow them to destroy the habitat of so many animals." At that moment, the clinic door opened, and a young woman entered. She carried a folder full of papers and had a determined look on her face. "Excuse the intrusion," she said. "My name is Sarah. I'm a biologist and environmental activist. I heard rumors about wolves in this area and came to investigate." Jack and Mike exchanged worried glances. Luna and her children were in the next room, and the fear of exposing their existence was palpable. Sarah, noticing their hesitation, continued, "I'm not here to cause trouble. In fact, I'm fighting against the road construction. If there really is a wolf population here, it could be crucial for our cause." After a moment of tense silence, Jack decided to trust her. He shared Luna's story, omitting some details, but emphasizing the importance of protecting the forest and its inhabitants. Sarah's eyes sparkled with interest and determination. "This changes everything," she said. "With evidence of a protected species in the area, we can legally contest the construction." Sarah's arrival brought new energy to the fight. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly, collecting evidence, preparing legal documents, and mobilizing community support. Meanwhile, Luna continued to grow stronger. She spent long periods watching out the window, her eyes fixed in the direction of the forest. Jack could feel her restlessness growing, knew that soon the time would come to let her go. One night, while everyone was asleep, Luna got up silently. She walked to where Jack was resting in a chair, watching over her as he had done so many nights. Gently, she touched his face with her muzzle, waking him. Jack opened his eyes, meeting Luna's gaze. At that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. It was time. "You're ready to go back, aren't you?" Jack whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Luna responded with a soft bark, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and determination. Jack nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He woke Mike and Sarah, and together they prepared for the journey back to the forest. The group set out before dawn, Luna leading the way with renewed energy. Her children followed closely behind her, eager to return to the only home they really knew. As they approached the forest, they heard distant howls. Luna stopped, her ears perking up. Then, to everyone's amazement, she threw her head back and let out a long, powerful howl. It was a call, an announcement of her return. Moments later, dark shapes emerged from the shadows of the forest. The pack had arrived, led by Ruby and the alpha wolf. The reunion was emotional, full of barks, licks, and displays of affection. Jack, Mike, and Sarah watched the scene with a mixture of joy and sadness. It was clear that Luna belonged to this world, but the idea of separating from her again was painful. The alpha wolf approached the human group, his posture cautious but not aggressive. He looked directly at Jack as if assessing him. After a long moment, the wolf slightly inclined his head, a gesture that seemed like recognition and respect. Luna moved to the alpha's side, but then turned and walked back to Jack. She sat in front of him, her eyes fixed on his. "It's going to be all right, girl," Jack said softly, stroking her head. "We're going to protect your home. I promise." As if understanding, Luna licked Jack's hand one last time. Then, with a final look at the human group, she turned and ran to join the pack. In seconds, they had disappeared into the darkness of the forest. The silence that followed was broken by Sarah. "Now we have everything we need," she said, her voice full of determination. "Let's save this forest." In the months that followed, an intense battle unfolded. Jack, Mike, and Sarah led a tireless campaign to protect the forest and its inhabitants. They faced legal challenges, corporate resistance, and even personal threats. The local community, initially skeptical, began to unite behind the cause. Stories about the wolf pack, though often exaggerated, captured the public's imagination. The forest, once seen as an obstacle to progress, became a symbol of resistance and preservation. Finally, after months of struggle, came the news everyone had been hoping for. The road project would be relocated, preserving the integrity of the forest. The celebration was bittersweet for Jack. Although exultant with the victory, he missed Luna and wondered how she was doing. One night, weeks after the final decision, Jack was awakened by a familiar sound. A howl, distant but unmistakable. He ran to the porch of his house, which now stood at the edge of the protected forest. There, at the edge of the forest, was Luna. By her side were her children, now fully grown, and several other members of the pack. For a moment, they looked at each other in silence. Then Luna let out a soft bark, almost like a thank you. Jack felt tears of joy streaming down his face. "You're welcome, my friend," he whispered. With one last look, Luna and the pack disappeared into the forest. But Jack knew it wasn't goodbye. It was the beginning of a new era, where humans and animals could coexist in harmony, protecting and respecting the home they shared. As the sound of howls faded into the night, Jack made a silent promise. He would dedicate the rest of his life to protecting this forest and all the creatures that inhabited it. It was his path to redemption, his way of honoring the special bond he shared with Luna. And so, under the starry sky, with the whisper of trees in the background, a new story began. A story of hope, of healing, and of a long-lost harmony between man and nature. 5 years passed since the night Luna and her pack disappeared into the saved forest. The small town at the edge of the woods had transformed. Where there were once plans for a road that would cut through the heart of the forest, there was now a thriving center for environmental research and conservation. Jack, now with gray strands at his temples, walked through the corridors of the center, smiling as he saw the photos and panels that told the story of the fight to save the forest. One image in particular always caught his attention, a blurred photo of Luna and her pups, captured by a trail camera during the crucial days of the campaign. "Still thinking about her, aren't you?" Sarah's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She now ran the research center, her enthusiasm for conservation as strong as the day they met. Jack nodded, a melancholic smile on his face. "Every day. Sometimes I wonder if she remembers us." "I'm sure she does," Sarah replied, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Come on, we have a group of kids arriving for today's excursion." The center had become a popular place for environmental education. Schools from all over the region brought students to learn about the importance of conservation and the delicate balance of the ecosystem. As Jack and Sarah guided the group of enthusiastic children along the trail leading to the edge of the forest, Mike joined them. The veterinarian, now semi-retired, was still a constant presence at the center, sharing his vast experience with the new generation of biologists and veterinarians. "Attention, children," Jack called, stopping the group at a lookout that offered a panoramic view of the forest. "What you're seeing is more than just trees. It's a home, a complex ecosystem full of life and stories." The children's eyes shone with admiration as Jack told Luna's story, carefully adapted for his young audience. He spoke of courage, forgiveness, and the importance of protecting nature. "And remember," he concluded, "each of you has the power to make a difference. Just as Luna protected her family, we can protect our home, this wonderful planet." As the group continued their walk, Jack stayed behind for a moment, his eyes scanning the tree line. For an instant, he thought he saw a movement, a flash of golden fur among the foliage. His heart raced. "Luna," he whispered, more to himself than in expectation of an answer. The wind whispered through the trees, almost like a response. Jack smiled, feeling a peace he had sought for years. Even if he never saw Luna again, he knew she was there, free and wild, protecting her family and her home. As the day progressed, the center received more visitors. Environmentalists, researchers, and curious individuals, all drawn by the extraordinary story of an abandoned dog who became the symbol of a saved forest. As night fell, after the last visitor had left, Jack, Sarah, and Mike gathered on the center's porch, watching the sunset over the forest. "You know," Mike said, breaking the contemplative silence, "sometimes I wonder if we did the right thing by keeping Luna's story a secret. Maybe if more people knew." Sarah shook her head. "No, we did the right thing. The legend is more powerful than the truth sometimes. Luna has become a symbol, something greater than just a dog or a wolf. She represents hope, redemption, the connection between humans and nature." Jack agreed. "Besides, we owe her and the pack their privacy and freedom. They deserve to live their lives without human intrusion." As they talked, a solitary howl echoed through the forest. The three friends looked at each other, smiles spreading across their faces. It was a sound they had heard occasionally over the years, always bringing with it a mixture of emotions, joy, longing, and a deep sense of renewed purpose. "I think we have our answer," Jack said softly. That night, after his friends had gone, Jack remained on the porch. The full moon bathed the forest in a silver light, creating an almost magical scene. He thought about everything that had happened in the last few years. The remorse that consumed him had transformed into determination. Luna's abandonment, an act of cowardice he was deeply ashamed of, had become the catalyst for a life dedicated to protecting nature. As he reflected, Jack saw movement at the edge of the forest. His heart almost stopped when he recognized the familiar shapes emerging from the shadows. Luna, now older but still majestic, led a small group. By her side were her children, Thunder, Breeze, and Shadow, now powerful adults. and to Jack's surprise, behind them came several pups, the new generation born free in the protected forest. The pack stopped at the edge of the clearing, their eyes shining in the moonlight. Luna took a step forward, her eyes meeting Jack's. There was no fear, no resentment in her gaze, only a deep understanding, a connection that transcended species. Jack felt tears streaming down his face. Slowly, respectfully, he knelt down, keeping his gaze fixed on Luna. "Thank you," he whispered, "for teaching me, for forgiving me, for showing me the way, for showing